mentoring for them for the 8A program. So it could happen. He's a good guy to know, folks. All right, so Ed and Monica, not last but not least, let me just say thank you, Monica, for your work. You're very professional, you're very caring, you're very intelligent, and you have a bright future. God bless you. All right, so Ed, you ready to go?
Sir, I'm ready.
All right, folks. So thank you, everyone, for taking time away from their busy schedule. And it is our hope that you can obtain some information, at least on a ground level, and from there you can grow and hopefully, God willing, expand your business. And that's what it's about: creating jobs, creating opportunities. That's what the Puerto Rican Summit in Orlando for the last 14 years has been promoting. And on behalf of the Dynamic CDC and the Puerto Rican Summit, and Hernan Gonzalez, because he's also a member of the team, and of course Ed Ramos, we welcome you. All right, Ed, it's all yours.
Yes, sir. So welcome, everyone. We are talking today about the 8A certification, and we want to address the steps quickly because we only have like an hour for this session. Next slide. Do I have control of the slide? Monica, can you move it to the next slide? Thank you. Oh, go back to number 2. Okay, so at the federal level, SBA is mandated to work with the federal agencies to ensure that the Federal Acquisition Regulation mandate of awarding contracts to small businesses is met. So the Federal Acquisition Regulation has a goal that 23% of all the contract dollars have to flow to small businesses. And then we have specific goals under that for small disadvantaged businesses, i.e. the 8A program participants of 13% for this fiscal year. It's going to go up to 15% next year. And then we have other certifications. We manage 4 certification pots: the 8A program, the HubZone program, the Women-Owned Small Business program, and the Service Disabled Veteran-Owned program. And in the bottom of the slide, you can see that certification in any of those pots can be very lucrative if you're able to obtain contracts from the federal government. As last year, we awarded $178.6 billion with a B dollars to small businesses in general, $76.2 billion to small disadvantaged businesses. In other words, the 8A program, $17.5 billion to HubZone participants, $30.9 billion to women-owned small businesses, and $31.9 billion to service disabled veteran-owned small businesses. So it's very lucrative, and it's not too difficult to get into the program. Next slide, please. So everything that we do is done through the main portal of certified.sba.gov. That's our main location if you are doing your online application. And the portal has a lot of information. So before you start submitting or filling your application, please do a walk around, visit the knowledge base, create an account, make sure that if you use a provider that you also have access to your account, as sometimes if you don't pay their fee, they lock you out and they will hold your password hostage until you make payments. So in the live area under certify, you will see that SBA is pausing the initial application submission. Next slide. And the rationale for that is we are working in a portal upgrade that is going to tie in all of the databases, the 4 databases, and we're going to offer additional functionality. So what we have done is effective August 1st, we're going to stop accepting initial applications so that we can make a clone of the database and then we can move it to the next system. And we hope to have the system back up by the middle of September. If you have submitted your application, if you're already in the pipeline, your application will continue to be processed in the order received, and it will continue to be process afterwards. We're doing these upgrades because we had issues with the 8A program last year where there was a legal court order that required that everyone that was coming in or was already in the program needed to demonstrate their social disadvantage eligibility in order for us to be in compliance with the court order. We requested new applicants to ask and comply with new questions in the application, and everyone that was already in the pipeline needed to submit a narrative of social disadvantage. For individuals that are in the pipeline, if you are being considered for an award, there's a way that you can send an email to certifications@sba.gov, provide the proposal number, agency, and the bid due date, and SBA will work with the agency if you are seriously considered as an award. And keep in mind that we are at the end of the fiscal year. Pretty much we have about 70 days before we close the fiscal year. So the agencies are going to be under the gun to make sure that they spend all the dollars available. But if you are being considered, we want to make sure that we help the agencies make sure that you get connected and receive that award. And the portal will offer additional functionality. And the idea is that we share common documents. So if you are an 8A applicant, but you're also a woman, the 8A shares common definitions for economic disadvantage. So once you become an 8A certified entity, you can also apply for the economically disadvantaged women-owned small business, and the SBA will give you reciprocity. Same thing with veterans. So the idea is that we're trying to streamline to make it easy on you, make it simpler, and also help you be able to get as many certifications as possible so that you can compete in different buckets. And we have information at certified.sba.gov/upgrade. Next slide, please. For those that are already in the pipeline, already have an active 8A account with a number assigned to them, remember that if you already in the program, you sign a participation agreement in which you agreed to submit material changes, like if you change ownership, if you sell stock, et cetera, you need to notify the SBA even during this upgrade period, because otherwise that may impact your eligibility. And if you are interested in obtaining additional certifications and you are already in the pipeline, we want you to wait until we open the new system, because it's going to make it a lot easier for you to be considered, and that should expedite processing your applications. The firms that need to renew, they will receive guidance from the respective program office regarding recertification. For the Women-Owned Small Business Program was extended for 1 year. And everybody that was already active in the WOSB program received an email to notify them that their expiration date was extended 1 year. The veterans certification was also extended 1 year. The HubZone recertification, the firms will be notified 30 days, but HubZone is one of those databases that is going to migrate to the new system, because in the past, up until July, the end of July, they will reside in a different database, but after we implement the new system, we're going to put all the eggs in one basket. And the 8A annual reviews will continue to be done and certified, and the firms have already been notified. And the other program that I don't list here that is going to be impacted is going to be the SBA Mentor Protege. So if you're submitting your SBA Mentor Protege application, to do that before the 1st of August or after we reopen the portal, so that you don't get stuck in the process waiting for action. Next slide. Okay, so the 8A program has been around since the early 70s. and it was implemented to help individuals, U.S. citizens. If anyone in the call is not a U.S. citizen, a legal permanent resident, or green card holder, unfortunately, the program is not open to you at this time because Congress has provided specific language that these benefits are only available to U.S. citizens. So the program was implemented to assist individuals to compete in the U.S. economy because there were many studies that indicated disparity, and some individuals needed a little bit of assistance. So once you become an 8A participant, it's a two-way street. We'll do things for you. We'll provide training in business management and marketing. We'll try to provide opportunities for you to team with other companies. We'll assign a facilitator, what we call the business opportunity specialist, a boss, that is going to provide support to you when competing for federal contracts. But in return, we want you to be able to provide the documentation that we need so that we can complete the annual reviews and all the compliance reviews, because this program has always been audited by different entities, by the General Accountability Office, internal to the SBA, by the Office of the Inspector General, and by the congressional members who are asking for specific data because they may be concerned that the benefits are going to entities that should not be receiving the benefits from the program. The one thing to mention here is, for us in the SBA, the 8A is a business development program. That's the official name of the program, 8A Business Development Program. But for many of you, it's a contracting program, meaning that you're only concerned with getting a contract. So sometimes there's a disconnect between what you expect and what we expect. But at the end of the day, we want to be able to help you to fish and catch that fish instead of just giving you the fish one time, because we want you to be able to repeat the experience and grow your company and reach your potential, maximum potential, and fulfill your American dream, whatever that means for you. More money, bigger house, faster car, bigger business, more employees. At the end of the day, you're going to be the master of your destiny. Next slide, please. So the benefits of the program are clear. So we provide a 13% government-wide prime contracting goal, and as I think I mentioned, that's going to go to 15% next fiscal year 2025, because that was one of the first goals that was put in play by the Biden-Harris administration when they took over office 3.5, almost 4 years ago. The program gives you business development assistance, training, and counseling. We use a number of tools and resources. The training could be organic to the SBA. We have contractors that we pay that provide training free of charge to eligible participants. And then we have a number of resource partners in the local community, the Small Business Development Centers, SCORE, Women Business Centers, Veterans Business Outreach Centers, and other organizations that provide training to help you learn the concepts behind doing business with the federal government, because it's not the same as doing business with a commercial entity. We have specific laws and regulations. We may have specific language and acronyms that we use that you need to be conversant on those terms so that you can be successful. Otherwise, you're going to be a step behind the pack, and that's second place is not good enough. You need to be at the head of the line so that you can get the contract and be a prime contractor, which is our goal for you in the 8A program. When you become certified, you become eligible for sole source contracts and competitive set-asides. A sole source contract is something that is supplies or services under $4.5 million. Anything like that can be sole sourced to just one company, and anything above that can be restricted for competitive participation just by 8A, and that's what we call a competitive set-aside. So the program has a lot of benefits. It's also the fastest way that a federal agency can get monies out the door, because when you get a 8A sole source contract, the agency submits an offer letter to the SBA, the servicing district office where your business is located. And we process it, we determine eligibility. If you're in compliance, we usually accept the offer, and then we'll give you instructions and the agency instructions so that you can negotiate. I've seen instances when I was a portfolio manager where the offer came on Monday, and by Friday, both the small business and the agency had negotiated, and the contract was signed, and they were getting ready to execute. So it's very fast. And again, if you are successful capturing contracts, that may be something that can create additional wealth for your company. And afterwards, at the end, you need to talk to Hernan Gonzalez, and he can tell you his experiences as a former 8A participant. The firms that participate in the program can team with other 8A firms and other small businesses and joint ventures and mentor-protege relationships. We do have a SBA mentor-protege program. We do require that the firms submit a talk to their assigned business opportunity specialists or facilitators so that we can keep abreast of all those directions that your company is going to take as you grow into the program. But we'll help you along. We'll provide the linkage to sometimes make connections. We can send letters on your behalf, search letters, requirement letters. We can do calls. We can do a lot of things to help you grow as an 8A participant. Next slide, please. So unfortunately, the program is limited to 9 years. We only gave an additional year to those firms that were active at the beginning of the pandemic in March of 2020. Congress got together and they said, we want to, because they're impacted, the employees at home, there's very little activity. We want to give them a break, and we give them an additional year. And I don't see that happening again. So right now it's limited to 9 years. So it's a fast pace. When you come in the door, we expect you to be ready to rock and roll from day one. If you are coming into the 8A program and you don't have a good idea of who your customer could be or how to sell to the federal government, you're going to waste valuable opportunities and valuable time. And I've seen companies that take a few years to ramp up and learn necessary skills and language and learn the tricks and get the right assistance so that they can make the connections. And again, that's your decision, but we want to receive companies that are ready to move from day one. And that's something that we can help you. And I'll talk about the training resources that we have available. So throughout the 9 years, you have to maintain your eligibility. You sign a participation agreement, and we'll review, like I said, with the annual reviews, we'll look at ownership, we'll look at any other relationships, anything that may compromise your integrity as an A firm. I used to define that as we take a snapshot of your company when you come in, and then we compare that every year. And if you have told us that you want to do sell stock or whatever, that requires pre-approval from the SBA. But usually, if it's something that is addressed in the regulations, we can work with you to make it happen. But if you do something and you don't notify the SBA, then you may be jeopardizing your ability to remain viable in the program. We do compliance annual reviews. There's no way around that. That's part of the eligibility review that we have to do in the firms. We try to make the process as painless as possible, but some companies they come in and they fight us tooth and nail because they don't want to provide tax returns, they don't want to provide financial statements, et cetera, et cetera. And those are the conditions of the relationship with the agency. When you come in, it's a two-way street. And if you don't comply, some of my peers across the U.S., they will terminate your participation. So when you come in, please be aware that it's because we're trying to obey a mandatory statute requirement. And if we don't do it, then our heads will roll. So someone is going to have to do it. So your facilitator is your business opportunity specialist, and their role is to help you guide and help you develop your company. They don't become your employee, but they're there to be your sanity check, and they can make calls on your behalf. And usually when an agency receives a call from an SBA person, they recognize that that's coming from another federal agency, and it gives it a little bit more credibility than if you call on your own. Of course, when you deal with them, the agency's concern primarily is lowest price technically acceptable, to make sure that you comply and you respond to the solicitations in the required timelines. But sometimes you need the help of the 800-pound gorilla, which is the SBA, and we can do a lot of things for you if you treat us nice. So when you come into the program, you become eligible to receive federal surplus property. So the federal government, every year we get a budget, and if we don't spend our budget 100%, we don't get funded at the same level. So what a lot of the agencies do is that they retire equipment and they dispose of it by putting it in the surplus program. So you may be able to find construction equipment, heavy lift equipment. I've seen cases where they have been planes, automobiles, boats, and other types of items that can help you grow your company. We allow participants in the 8A program to access the surplus property program with the idea that that's an additional tool and additional equipment that will lead to business growth. So you need to prepare a business plan when you are in, but that's an excellent way to get some piece of gear that is out there that the government doesn't need, that may help you become more competitive and a better company. So the SBA 8A program is well accepted. We have relationships with 47 plus federal agencies, and they all agree to use the 8A program. The way that it works is when they have an offer, they present it to the SBA. SBA becomes the prime contractor. And because you're a participant in our program, we can sub it out to you, and we give you a specific letter saying, Company A, you can now negotiate with agency B, and once you negotiate and agree if you're going to get the contract and the price, et cetera, send us a copy of the contracting document so that we can monitor. We tell the agency, if you have an issue with this contractor, before you decide that you want to remove them or terminate them, please contact the SBA, because remember, this is our contract and we can find a suitable replacement within the SBA 8A inventory. Maybe the company that replaces you as a vendor is not in Florida, maybe it's in Alabama. But at the end of the day, we don't want federal dollars to be wasted because a contractor had issues. And so we act proactively to do those kinds of decisions to protect federal dollars. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yes, thank you. So in order for you to come into the program, you need to have active profiles in SAM.gov and DSPS. When you come into certify the portal, the first thing that you do when you start registering your companies, you need to claim your SAM.gov profile and link it to the certify profile, your application. So you need to be in good active order in SAM.gov, and the dynamic small business search profile is needed because that's what we use to market to the federal agencies. You don't want to come into the 8A program and not be marketed by us, because otherwise you have to do all the work yourself. So you want to take advantage and piggyback on a free ride on the services that we offer to all of the 8A participants. The program is only open to small businesses, and we have a table of size standards that we use when you apply. When you register in SAM.gov, you define yourself as a small business based on revenues or employees, depending on your NAICS code, primary NAICS code. And that's how the SBA defines who can partake of our programs and services. You have to be in control, as I mentioned, by a U.S. citizen. You have the owner must be a socially and economically disadvantaged individual, and I'll address that in the upcoming slide. 51% of the business has to be owned by the social and economically disadvantaged individual or individuals. It could be more than one that can group the percentages together. And as long as you meet that 51%, you're good to go. The business has to be controlled and managed on a full-time basis. Full-time basis for us means Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. So if you are working, if you're a multiple business owner, what we call a serial business owner, or if you are working another job, the SBA is going to find out, because when you submit your personal tax returns, we're going to see that W-2 that says that you made $100,000 working for company B, and the SBA is going to ask you a question: to which company do you devote your time Monday through Friday from 8 to 5? And if your answer is to the other company, then they're going to say, well, wrong answer. You need to work full-time for your business. Otherwise, you have a devotion to duty issue. And that's something that is addressed in our SBA regulations. You also need to have good character, meaning that your company or you are not debarred, suspended, in parole or probation. And that's about all I'm going to say in there. You need to have 2 years of business history in your primary industry classification with tax returns, and that may sometimes be waived, but it depends on whether you have 2 consecutive years or not. Next slide, please. So SAM registration is free. We have a resource called the Apex Accelerators that they can help you get registered if you haven't done that already. Next slide. Same thing with the SBA Dynamic Small Business Search, dsbs.sba.gov. Registration is free, and the Apex Accelerator, when you go in there and you say, I want to be registered in SAM.gov because I want to do federal contracting, they will also ask you if you want to be registered in DSBS, and they will say, can you show me your capability statement? And they will do basic marketing search to find out which agencies are buying your product. They can do one-on-one counseling. They have specialized training, and they do other things to help you grow your company into federal government contracting. But they can do state and local contracting as well. So they're not a one-trick pony. They're there to help you. Next slide, please. So I mentioned that you need to be a small business. A small business is defined in our regulations as an entity that is organized for profit. So if you're a nonprofit entity, you don't qualify for our program because you don't meet the basic definition of a small business. You need to have a place of business in the U.S. and you operate primarily within the U.S. or make a significant contribution to the U.S. economy through payment of taxes or use of American products, materials, or labor. So that's the basic definition. If you want to talk more about that, you can send me an email and I can entertain your question and try to get you more clarity. Next slide, please. So we use business size standards, which are basically depending on the industrial code that is applicable to your company. You may have multiple industrial codes because I have yet to meet a person that only does one thing in life. Usually you have multiple skill sets that you can use to sell your product to the federal government. So each skill set has a size standard. So if you know a lot about administrative processes, that's one size standard. If you know how to work with concrete, that's another size standard. If you know how to help staffing companies find employees, that's another size standard, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you need to be aware of those size standards. And if you have a problem or if you have a question, my Apex accelerators throughout the state of Florida, we have 9 locations throughout the state. They're usually tied in with the Small Business Development Center program, and they can help you free of charge to determine if you are a small business and what should be the applicable NAICS codes for your company. Next slide. and the size standard is we have a table of size standard within the SBA, and we update that table. The last adjustment that we did was adjustment for inflation. The largest business size that we have is construction, which is around $46.5 million. When we average the revenues over 5 years, 5 years. And then we have other under industries like manufacturing that are based on employees, where we average over 5 years, and the minimum, some industries go from 500 employees to 1,500 employees. Next slide. That's the table of size standards, and the link is going to be available in your materials. Next slide. That's a sample for engineering services. We have multiple types of engineering services. We have a basic plain vanilla engineer who has a maximum size standard of $25.5 million when we divide by 5 years. If the engineer does military and aerospace equipment and military weapons, it's 47 million. Same with engineering services for energy and maritime engineering. So depending on how you define and how what type of work you do, is that we determine what's the maximum size to be considered a small business. Next slide. So we need every person that applies for the 8A program to have a primary NAICS code. We need a primary NAICS code because, next slide, we need to compare you to the average company in the US that carries that NAICS code. And we need to determine if you are below that performance of that company, at the same level, or above that company. If you're above that company, then you, according to our definitions and our Office of the Inspector General, then you don't suffer economic disadvantage. But if you are below or at, then you may suffer economic disadvantage, which is good for you. But you may have multiple NAICS codes in your company, but only one primary NAICS code. And that's the NAICS code where you generate the majority of your revenues for the preceding 2 years. Next slide. And usually there is a issue with companies that have been established for a while that file the 1120S tax return form, because some accountants, they grab an NAICS code out of the air, they put it in there, and you assume that that's your primary industry, but in reality, you may be doing something else. And when you apply for certification, my reviewers are going to notice that, and they're going to ask you a question: what's your real primary NAICS code? Oh, you don't know? Okay, let's look at a list of all the contract and all the work for the last 2 years. You need to code it with the NAICS code so that we can determine what's the predominant area of work for your company. And that's a cumbersome process, but we need to do that because we need to be able to measure you apples to apples and oranges to oranges. There's an issue that many companies have they suffer for something that we call affiliation. And affiliation is that you have affiliates. You may be too close to another company because you have worked with them over and over and over. And that gives the impression that the firm has either the ability or the actual control over your firm. And there's multiple types of affiliations. So if you have any questions on that regard, please feel free to send me an email, and I can share the relevant information based on your case, and we can determine if you are affiliated. What could happen is, if you are affiliated, then we have to consider the size of the two companies. If you're affiliated when an entity has multiple companies, then we have to add them all together. The resulting size, then we compare to the table of size standards. And if you are above the published size standard, then you're not considered a small business. And that's a kiss of death for many companies, especially those that do business in a regular fashion with larger entities, because they don't realize that that may impact them because they may be considered affiliated down the road. Next slide.
That's interesting.
Yes, sir. So as I mentioned, all the applicants for the 8A program need to suffer from social and economic disadvantage. So social disadvantage is a situation where persons have been subjected to racial or ethnic prejudice or cultural bias because of their identities as members of groups with regard to individual qualities. Next slide. So our regulations address 5 groups of U.S. citizens that are presumed to suffer social disadvantage: Black American, Asian Pacific, Hispanic American, including Spanish and Portuguese, Native Americans, and subcontinent Asian American. Now, this situation was challenged by a company that sued the SBA, and the lawsuit was resolved by the court, Ultima Services versus USDA and SBA. And in the fall of 2023, the judge ruled that every single applicant to the 8A program and every single participant to the 8A program had to submit a narrative of social disadvantage, and the SBA has to review that narrative to make sure that they comply with the intent of the law. So we have a group of individuals that when they look at the mirror, they say, oh, I suffer from social disadvantage, but I'm not a member of one of those 5 groups. Those individuals can establish a case by submitting a narrative of social disadvantage using something that is called preponderance of evidence. Next slide. And preponderance of evidence is a legal term that is used in the court of law where you have to demonstrate and convince others that your situation, your facts, causes, and damages are the correct version of the situation. So you need to be able to provide supporting witness testimony or affidavits, or maybe you quote a regulation, or maybe you had an issue that impacts you from school or employment, et cetera, et cetera. So for us in the SBA, individual social disadvantage includes one objective distinguishing feature that contributes to social disadvantage, such as race, ethnic origin, gender, physical handicap, long-term residence in an environment isolated from the mainstream of American society, or other cases. Personal experience of substantial and chronic social disadvantage in American society, not in other countries. Negative impact or entry into advancement into the business world because of the disadvantage. And we'll consider education, employment, business history, and we'll consider the totality of circumstances showing disadvantage in entering into or advancing in the business world. In other words, you need to think, you need to write, and you need to convince the reviewers that you are a socially disadvantaged individual. In the past, we gave the presumption of social disadvantage to individuals that were Hispanic Americans. But we cannot do that anymore because of the U.S. Ultima Services versus USDA decision. So now we need to see a statement from you when you submit your application. There are going to be some questions in which you address, but we also need to see a statement, not one paragraph, maybe, make it more interesting, because you need to put your selling cap on. You need to sell the reviewers that you have suffer from a social disadvantage. If you don't do a good job, the reviewers and the lawyers will not be able to approve your package. And unfortunately, I know how to do it. I know how to write it, but they tell me you cannot do it as an SBA employee because that creates a conflict of interest. So I can give you some advice, but I cannot give you the all the words that you need to show in your narrative. But we have resources. The Apex Accelerator should be able to help you, put you in the general ballpark for the narrative of social disadvantage. So it's next slide. It's not that we're trying to hinder your growth. It's that those are the cards that have been dealt by the court to the SBA, and we have to obey the law, whether we like it or not. So the next criteria to be socially and economically disadvantaged is that you need to suffer from the inability to compete in the free enterprise system due to diminished access to capital and credit. I am economically disadvantaged because I don't make as much money as Elon Musk. So I can very easily prove, but the SBA had made it simpler because, next slide, what we do is we collect information from a personal financial statement that we have online that used to be called the SBA Form 413. So we collect assets minus liabilities, and then we have some statutory exclusions, which include the equity in the primary residence, equity in the business, and if you have an IRA or 401k, we can subtract that as well. The SBA may ask to see those documents because they want to make sure that they are in fact qualified. And then whatever's left, what is called your adjusted net worth, has to be less than $850,000. So that's the standard objective criteria for economic disadvantage. In my mind, the social disadvantage is subjective, but economic disadvantage is very easy to prove because it's very objective. Just do the math, list everything that you own, everything that you owe, and then remove the statutory exclusions, and then the number has to be less than $850,000. Next slide. We also do two additional tests. The average adjusted gross income for the last 3 years must be under 400K. So when you look at your IRS Form 1040, the bottom of the first page has a line that says adjusted gross income, AGI. And so you take those numbers, add and divide by 3, and that should be your average AGI. And we'll do that automatically when we get your tax returns. And the fair market value of all assets must be under $6.5 million, which is very generous, but that's the standard rule based on a case that our Office of Administrative Law adjudicated, I want to say like 6 years ago. Next slide. Good character is an issue that is doesn't imply that you are a happy character like Goofy from Disney. What the SBA looks at is at indicators that show lack of good character. So we look for adverse information regarding possible criminal conduct, violation of SBA regulations, debar suspension, individuals that lack business integrity, someone that is incarcerated or on parole probation, firms that submit false information during the application process, or firms or individuals that fail to pay financial obligations to the federal government. If you have been told your criminal record was expunged, and I had a client like that in the past, you still need to report that situation to SBA, because even though the record is quote unquote expunged, it shows up in the federal crime database for the FBI. And when our reviewers run your name, and if they show that in there and you indicate that you don't have any issues with the law, they're going to assume that you lied on purpose. And we don't want them to use that as an excuse to exclude you from the process. Also, if you have failed to pay financial obligations to the federal government and you owe money to Uncle Sam, to the IRS, my suggestion to you would be talk to the IRS and get into a payment plan, because we already have a case of law where one large aircraft manufacturer owed the government a lot of money, and they were prevented from getting a significant multi-billion-dollar contract, but then they show that they had entered into a payment plan with the government, and the government says, as long as they're accurate, regular on their payments, and we can verify that this is a bona fide payment plan, that means that they're making a good faith effort to pay their debts, so we cannot stop them, let them get their contract. And that was Boeing Corporation back in the late 80s. Next slide. So for the firms that don't have the 2 years operating as a business, or they may be a little weak in some of the areas, we have something that we review that is called the potential for success. And the potential for success is the ability of the small business firm to have reasonable prospects of success when they competed in the private sector, because we assume that the private sector is going to behave in the same way as the federal sector. So we look for activity or business in the primary next code for 2 years immediately prior to the 8A application, operation in the firm primary industry with revenues reported in the business tax returns, financial statements. We look for financial capability, whether you have sufficient capitalization in your business, bonding capacity, manageable debts. We look for managerial and technical capability to perform and prior contracts, the necessary personnel, licenses, certifications, facilities, prior experience. Next slide. We also look for management capability, the training and education and experience of the CEO and the other key managers of the office. And then we also look at the qualifications or ability to perform on federal contracts. Keep in mind that if you don't have federal contracts, we'll look at civilian or business to business contracts. So because we can assume that if you were able to meet the deadlines for a contract that you had with Duke Energy, for example, that you're going to do the same thing with the federal government. Now, if you fail to perform and you fail to deliver and you were always late and Duke give you some negative ratings, we are going to assume that that's a way that you behave and that you're going to do the same thing for the federal government. We may not want to risk admitting you into the 8A program because you don't perform in time, et cetera, et cetera. Next slide. So for those individuals that fail the initial review, when we do the potential for success analysis, there is a waiver, a potential waiver that can be obtained. If you get turned down, all you have to do is prepare some narratives using the concept of preponderance of evidence, and then you need to address those 5 bullets that are in there: business management experience, technical expertise, adequate capital to carry out the business plan, record of successful performance of contracts, and the ability to mobilize, obtain personnel, facilities, blah, blah, blah. So you need to convince the SBA application reviewers that you can be successful if you're admitted to the 8A program. Otherwise, they're going to have an issue trying to convince the final decision maker, which is the Associate Administrator for Business Development. And if she's not convinced, she's not going to sign the document. Next slide. We also look at ownership. 51%, depending on the type of legal structure, seems to be the magical number that we're looking for. And we'll review the legal formation documents for your company, anything that you file with the division of corporations, including the articles of organization, stock ledger, your minutes. If you don't have minutes, we'll ask for those for the last 2 preceding years, because we need to see how much really you own and if there are any other commitments to other individuals who may have control over your company. Next slide. Control is not the same as ownership. Control is the strategic policy setting exercised by the board of directors and day-to-day management and administration of business operations. So you need to make sure that your documents show that the socially and economically disadvantaged individual is in control, not just ownership, but control. They can make the decisions. They control the voting. They have the majority votes. They control the checkbook. They control the hiring and firing, even though you may have already delegated that to someone else in your company. But you need, the SBA is going to look at the delegation paperwork. If you're a small business, usually you delegate some of those functions by documenting that in your meeting minutes at the beginning of the year, and you say, okay, husband and wife team, my the wife is the owner of the business, but I'm going to delegate signing contracts and negotiating contracts to my husband, but I'm the ultimate decision maker of the business. And if you do that, then you'll be able to pass the review with flying colors. Next slide. So depending on the legal structure, we expect to see in writing when we review the agreements, contracts, meeting minutes, and all of these things are required if you're operating a Florida registered business. If your business is registered somewhere else, they may not be required, but I work in Florida, so I need to tell you that the Florida state legal statutes govern your activities. And if you don't comply with that, that opens the door that if you get a significant contract, your competitors are going to find that you're not in compliance with the state of Florida, and they're going to use that as an excuse to sue you and take you out of the competition so they can move ahead on the ladder and get the contract. Next slide. So we have some firms that by language and the regulations cannot participate. We have brokers, and a broker is someone that doesn't add material value to the item or service because they do not take ownership or possession or handle the firm being procured. So like some people buy from a foreign country and they serve as the middle person, and then they arrange to have the item shipped to the buyer who happens to be in California, for example, but the item is not touched by the middleman. You're considered a broker, and the SBA will not allow you in the 8A program because unfortunately we have language to that respect. I mentioned the borrower suspended individuals of concern, nonprofit businesses or organizations. And then if you have a franchise, we have to look at the franchise disclosure document to determine if you have enough control to run the franchise as a small business. Because if the franchisor wants you to all the franchisees to look the same, cook the French fries for the same amount of minutes and toss them out after certain minutes and use this salt and buy from this and that, then you may be a successful franchise owner, but you don't really run your business because those the criteria for running your business is given to somebody else, which is the master franchisor. And that becomes an issue for the 8A program because you're not the decision maker anymore. You're just an employee of the master franchise. You can participate in the 8A program as a business or an individual only once. So if you sell your business, you cannot reapply, and but you can be a counselor or a consultant, or you can get into the mentor protege because you have been around the block as a former participant, you have experience, and you can help others to grow, and you can own 49% of the mentor protege joint venture relationship, and that opens the door for you to help that other firm. And if you can get that sanctioned and approved by the SBA mentor protege program, we're not going to say no. We're not going to say no to that relationship, and that entity will be able to come into the 8A program, and that creates a win-win situation for both of you. Next slide. If you pay to a packager, the packagers cannot receive a fee that is a percentage of the gross contract value. A lot of them make that mistake and they put that in there. When you answer some questions in the application, we'll ask if you're using a packager, and that may create some issues with your application. And of course, you know that we'll start asking 10,000 questions, and by the end of the next year, you probably won't be able to be certified with that packager, because we believe that the application is simple enough, and we have provided a lot of fine-tuning and streamlining so that it's easy for you to apply. All you have to do is look at your source documents, and if you don't have a source document, we have the Small Business Development Center, Florida SBDC, that can help you put those documents in play, create them. They can help you. They may send you to a lawyer. So they may help you organize your infrastructure so you're in compliance with the program before you send your application, and that way you won't get denied. Next slide. Financial statements and tax returns, they will be reviewed to determine the potential for success and how the company has performed historically in contracts, and to determine if the company is financially healthy to perform in federal 8A contracts. GAAP requires that we look at 5 years of balance sheet and profit and loss statements, and we'll look at 5 years of tax returns, even though we only asked for 2, but the SBA has a caveat in the application process that if we need any other information, we'll ask for it, and if you don't submit it, then we will make a determination without it, and the determination could be that you don't qualify for the program. So if you need assistance with any of the above, reach out to the closest SBA partner, Florida SBDC or SCORE, or if you happen to be in an area where there's a Women Business Center or Veteran Business Outreach Center, they can help you ensure that you have the right documentation. They can review and make sure that you can pass with flying colors. Next slide. The application process is done electronically completely. We don't do paper anymore. You can collect the documents and scan and upload, and there's instructions in that link in there in the help desk for Certify. We provide now DocuSign signatures, so that's all available. You can attest your documents electronically. And then when we ask for information and we send an email, more than likely the information, the query is going to, we call that an RFI, request for information. That's going to come internal to Certify. So you have a dashboard, and there's an area where you're going to get communiques from your analyst or your reviewer. Please review, if you submit your application, please review at least weekly, because if you miss the deadline, the SBA is going to assume that you're not interested in the application anymore, and they're going to withdraw your application. And if they re-accept it, you're not going to start in the same place in the queue where you were at. You will be at the back of the line. So as part of the ways that we can help you, because we want to make sure that once we take on a particular package, that we can complete it within a reasonable amount of time. We have 90 days to complete. Next slide. We have 90 days to complete the review of the packages once the package is deemed complete by the SBA. So the 90-day clock starts when we say your package is complete. So we have provided, and we continue to provide specialized training for 8A firms. So all the partners provide specialized training. We have a program called Empower to Grow, which used to be called the 7J Management and Technical Training Program. It's available at that link. And the 2 providers for Florida are the Florida State Minority Supplier Development Council. So if you register with them, they'll keep sending you emails, and they do a bunch of different topics on how to sell and how to get prepared, et cetera, et cetera. And then we have another company called BitSpeed that has a number of products, and one of them is how to get you to effectively capture federal opportunities, and they will show you a lot of good things free of charge. So that's complimentary provided by the SBA, because we pay for those courses for the national area, and then Florida State MSDC, we do that for the Southeast U.S. We also do training online through the district offices, and we do training in person. So check the district calendars or the master calendar at sba.gov, and you'll find a lot of training opportunities. If there's something online that has been offered in California, by all means, if you have the time, take it, because you may learn something that perhaps we're not addressing correctly in Florida, but that's going to put you head and shoulders ahead on the competition for other applicants in the 8A program. Next slide. So we have training, specialized training on step-by-step in YouTube. The SBA has a YouTube. Certify has training aids, a lot of FAQs. You can send questions directly to the 8A business development team in headquarters, or if you are a old school type person, you can call the monthly 8A. We call that the straight talk. Yes, sir.
No, yeah, that's just funny the way you said it, old school type
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
Sounds
Well,
like me.
yeah, yeah. Next slide, please. I'm new school, so I was born after, ¿cómo se llamaba aquel? Después
After
de,
Korea?
no. The group that Ricky Martin used to belong,
Menudo.
Menudo. Yeah, I was born after Menudo. So
Oh,
yeah. So anyway, so we have resources, all kinds of assistance. So our main resource in Florida is called the Florida Apex, the Apex Accelerator. They used to be called Procurement Technical Assistance Center, PTAC, and they're tied into 9 universities in the state of Florida, and they do outreach in many locations. The services are free, and I strongly recommend that you take advantage of that if you are seriously considering the 8A program. Next slide.
that's good for Alfredo.
Yes, sir. And when we do have Apex in Arizona.
Oh, good.
We have a resource guide that you can download in English or Spanish, the YouTube channel, and you can reach me. You can call that number or send me an email, jose.ramos@sba.gov, or Eileen, who was in the call, but she had to jump out. She's in the South Florida district in Miami. So I'm in Orlando. I work for the North Florida district office. Next slide. And so we collect feedback to send to the White House because they want to know how well the citizens are receiving the services that they're advocating up in DC. So if you take a minute, once you get the materials, just please let us know how you feel, if this training hit the spot or not. Tell Luis if you want something more detail. Certainly, this is something that we're recording so that we can put it in the YouTube channel, so you can come back and listen to it again. And maybe if you missed something the first time, the second time it may be a bit clearer. And we're going to expand on the other certifications that we have and any other topics that you tell Luis, and then Luis, we can negotiate doing this. Next slide. And that's the end of the presentation. We'll take questions if we have any questions. If not, then it's up to Luis to dispense
Well,
with the proceedings.
are there any questions? One of the things that we're very, strict about is that we want to get as much information as possible out into the community. So even if you don't have a question now, maybe later on, maybe tomorrow in your conversations with others or reviewing some of this presentation, you'll have other, a question will come up that needs to be addressed or unique clarification. Please feel free to either email me. I'm at info@dynamic, DYNAMIC, CDC for Community Development Corporation.com. So that's Luis de Rosa at info@dynamiccdc.com. And of course, you have Ed Ramos's email as well that you can, address as well in terms of the questions or clarification you might find that are important for you in your future. And this is an opportunity. We provide this free of charge. So, Dynamic CDC is the prime organizer of the annual Puerto Rican Summit in Orlando, where we bring federal, state, and city officials to meet with the business community and the community at large. And we next year's Puerto Rican Summit is going to be on May. It's in the month of May. I don't have the date in front of me. I'm sorry. I apologize. But just email me and I'll get that to you. But then again, thank you for your time. Thank you. I hope is there any questions, first of all? All right. Moving right along. We appreciate your service. We appreciate Ed. Thank you, Ed, for taking time from your schedule and for providing an excellent presentation on 8A certification. Thank you also to Monica for hosting the event on behalf of the Puerto Rican Summit, Dynamic CDC, and the SBA. And of course, Hernan Gonzalez for his expertise as a 8A graduate, and he's also a mentor. So that's somebody you need to, especially Alfredo, you need to get in contact with Hernan Gonzalez. And I'll get you his contact information should you need it. So thank you to everyone. And we hope to see you soon. We'll be in contact and we'll send out a notice with some questions and suggestions. And at the same time, also direct you to our YouTube channel. Thank you and have a good day. Thank you, Ed, for your time. You were excellent. I want you to know.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for your attendance.
No, it was great. It was really great. A lot of good information. It just seemed to be a lot of, in one slot of time, but I'm gonna tell you, it was really great. And Veronica says thank you to everyone. Okay, thank you. See you soon, Veronica. Let me see. Santos to everyone. Santos, you're out in Key West, right? Israel Mendez to everyone. Thank you. That's very nice, Israel. Thank you for your time. All right, folks, we're about ready.
No, I'm from Miami.
Perdón, you're from Miami. Pensaba que tú estabas en Key West. I don't know, no sé por qué.
I'm from Miami. Marusa recommend me to join the meeting.
Gracias por su tiempo.
Sí, gracias a ustedes también.
¿Y cómo, how did you find it?
Marusa me recomendó que cogiera la reunión. Yo tengo un pequeño negocio de comida en Miami.
Qué bueno.
Un pop-up en un farmer's market, so estamos buscando crecimiento.
And how long you been in business?
3 años.
Okay, so we got to stay in touch. Anything that we're doing that we can share with you.
Muchísimas gracias. Yo no sabía cómo manejarla, no sabía que me estaban escuchando aquí ya.
Sí, no.
Pero muchísimas gracias. Y sí, estoy muy interesada, así que estaré en contacto con ustedes.
Gracias.
Gracias a ustedes.
Y darles recuerdo también a Marusa y por su tiempo y por lo que ella hace para la comunidad.
Sí, señor. Muchas gracias, se lo diré. Buenas tardes.
Gracias. Bye. Anybody else have a comment? Is Amina still on or she left? Amina McNeil represents, she's the executive director representing Martin Luther King Economic Development Office in Miami. And I was wondering if David Rodriguez from the Osceola County Department of Economic Development was going to be on it. Maybe he was on it, but it is during working hours, as you know. And Josue Emmanuel Rivera is the executive director of the Puerto Rico Virgin Islands SBA office in the Caribbean, and we're looking forward to continue conversations with him to see how we can support each other, create an opportunity between Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, and of course Florida. So that should be a really of interest to many people. So I'd like to say now is thank you very much for your time. God bless everyone. And don't forget to vote.